Now, the central bank, that's the Bank of Ghana, is well positioned to redeem the country from its current economic crisis without heading to the IMF for a bailout. That's the thought of an economist, Professor Charles Godfred Akka, when he featured on Newsfile on Saturday. Professor Godfred Akka believes with proper management and discipline, the central bank can pump in $1 trillion to redeem Ghana from the economic dilemma. He is confident the central bank's option will be far better than what the country risks in opting for a program from the Bretton Woods institution. But how is that possible? We'll get more from him pretty soon. But first, let's hear from him when he appeared on the Newsfile over the weekend.
If they are now trying to go back to IMF for $2 billion, I am saying that the central bank can finance about $1 trillion. Okay. And depending on how it is spent, it should not cause us inflation. That can fix our roads, create the industries, employ the youth on the street. It should not be IMF be the solution. They will not give us anything that can change Ghana in 10 years. Okay. So I believe that our problem is the central bank. And the IMF is saying that the central bank is zero financing. Why should it be zero financing? What is the role of the central bank? The cedi is a public good. We don't go and get a cedi from China. The cedi is printed by.
Now, as government comes under heavy criticism from its critiques for mismanaging the economy, a close associate of President Akufo-Addo, Gabi Asare-Ocheredako, fight off these claims, insisting the Akufo-Addo-led administration remains Ghana's all-time best government in handling Ghana's economy. He was also on Newsfile.
Even if you don't intend to go to the IMF, but you are put in a situation where your avenues of raising revenue are being closed, whether through parliamentary action or by public rejection, then you have to tackle it. And I believe that whatever you say, we are in the IMF, but when you look at the fact that the economy is still growing, beyond the challenges of servicing your debt. I heard someone say that the IMF may not necessarily bring us money, but I think what it does is that it stops a run on your reserves, it stops a run on your bonds. And I think if we have that stability over the next 12 to 15 months, I believe that the country will see a turnaround.
The minister said we will not go to IMF.
Of course, because the minister believed that he had a solution, and that's the solution that we had. And what has happened to that solution? We have seen less than 20% of the projected revenues coming from E-levy. You have to just look at the numbers in 2019. And I'm saying that in 2019, if you look at in terms of our revenue to debt servicing, it was not where it is now. If you look at our numbers in terms of debt to GDP ratio, it was nowhere near where it is now. And if you remember, even in 2019, government has passed a law, to impose a ceiling on budget deficit. It was 5%, and they hit it. So in terms of managing the economy, there were challenges, but the policies were working. And I think that's how we have to look at it. No one can say that it's only because of COVID we're here. We had challenges. That's why we went to the IMF in 2015. Because the situation was challenging in 2014 and 2015 when we went to the IMF. Nobody can dispute that. But the point is, what was the trajectory that the country was on? Those are the things that you have to look at. And let me give you a few examples. If you look at, in terms of exchange rate levels, by 2017, let me just give it to you, it was minus 4.9%, By December 2019, it was minus 3.9%. Where is it now? So you could see, and when you look at the trajectory, that's the point I'm making. It is obvious that steps were being taken to deal with that, but there were weaknesses, fundamental weaknesses within the system. So what did COVID do? And when you look at the numbers, not just in Ghana, when you look at inflation, we've seen about 350% increase, in inflation from December 2019 to May 2022.
Well, for the opposition NDC, the Ghanaian economy will simply get worse should the IMF remain the only option. Felix Ofosu-Kwakye is spokesperson for former President John Dramani Mahama.
I've heard people compare us to Japan, the US. They say, Japan has debt to GDP ratio of 260%. So if we have about 80%, it is not such a disaster. Look, it is a disaster for us. Japan borrows at such a low rate. They borrow under 1%. In addition to that, they use a fraction of their revenue to service debt. So they don't have the sort of fiscal rigidities that we have. In 2021, we used 92% of our tax revenue to service debt. The first quarter of this year, we used 108% of tax revenue to service debt. And people can look at this and claim that there were options. If there were options, given how arrogant and proud this government is, they would not have opted for the IMF. The sad part is that they have waited too long. They should have gone immediately after the election.
So to what extent can that position be true? We'll find out shortly. But first, let's take a further look at the option of a bailout from the central bank. Professor Charles Godfred Aka is an economist with some interesting thought he's been sharing on his file. He joins us live with more on Zoom this morning. Good morning, Prof, and many thanks for your time. Give us further insight into this central bank option and how it will work.
Thank you very much for having me. So basically, I think I need to explain myself very well so that I'm not misunderstood. What Ghana faces now is a situation of lack of resources. We are facing a financial constraint. Okay, so typically when you're facing a financial constraint, it means what you need is resources. I want you to assume, for example, that Ghana is the only country on the planet. And if Ghana was the only country on the planet and there was no IMF and there's no US or Japan, and we have a closed economy, the only way you can get resources, cities to spend to build hospitals or schools and infrastructure and to create employment is for the central bank to finance that development. And the central bank is part of government. It is part of government and the only institution that is mandated to issue currency. You and I cannot do that. The central bank is not a household. It's not an individual that can run out of money. That kind of understanding is very wrong. The central bank can print money as much as is desirable and is optimal to run the economy. The budget, which is being run by the Minister of Finance, is a fiscal policy. And both the Minister of Finance and the central bank are responsible to develop this economy for us to get the aspirations of the shared prosperity and employment that we need. So typically, where there is no IMF and where there's no US to give us money or international capital market, we will expect the government to expand through the help of the central bank. So the central bank would print money and the government has an account with the central bank. So the central bank will just debit the government account and the government will just issue checks to pay for infrastructure, to pay for hospital, and to pay for all that needs to be done. That's what is done in every country. Now, when we have an open economy with international capital market and with exporting and international trade, there are other options beyond what the central bank can do. So typically many countries now could borrow on the international market. You could get foreign aid, which is free grant, like India will come and build a Jubilee House for us, or build a university, a UGMC, new hospital for us, or Kolebu. This is another way of resources. You could get foreign direct investment, where foreigners will come and invest in your country. You could get remittances. And if we export gold and cocoa and oil, we could get net foreign exchange. So these are additional resources. And when these resources are available, you don't need the central bank to print money. So that means if you have enough export revenue, you have enough remittances, you have enough foreign direct investment coming in, then these are what normally typically governments will be using. But in a situation, in a crisis situation, in a recession, all over the world, even as I'm talking, in many years ago, during the First World War, during the Second World War, Germany, Japan, all economies, they resorted to the central bank to finance the building up of ammunition. All the things that the US used to fight, Japan used to fight, Germany used to fight, They were not financed by the IMF. Actually, the
Prof,
IMF was non-existent.
so, Prof, if I understand you, what you're asking the central bank to do is to print more money. Is that it?
Well, you could say so. That's if there's need. But basically, I want you to see what happened. During the COVID, you have seen what the Minister of Finance presented, the COVID account he presented to Parliament. According to the Minister of Finance, we spent about 19.3 billion Ghana cedi to fight COVID in 2020. And out of that, 10 billion Ghana cedi came from the central bank. I don't know how they got it. Basically, the central bank buys bonds. It decides to finance government COVID expenditure by issuing a bond and buying it. So basically, the government owes the central bank. If it came from the reserves of the central bank, fair enough. If the central bank had to print money, fair enough. But now, government owes the central bank 10 billion, and the interest is pegged at the prime rate with 2 years grace period. And that did not cause inflation. So basically, it means that instead of going to IMF, and remember, the last time we went to IMF, when President Mahama went there, they only gave us $918 million, which is equivalent to about 1.5 billion at the time for 3 years. So basically, it means that for each year, IMF only gave us about $330,000 with all the conditionalities that came with it. Now, the Bank of Ghana just gave us last year alone about 10 billion. That's almost 3, 4, 5 times what we got from IMF. So it means that we don't actually have a financial constraint. And as I'm talking now, if you go to Japan, the Japan, and first of Fuzukachi, I think misunderstood my point on Saturday. Japan, now their debt to GDP is about 260%. And Japan is not in crisis. And the interest rate in Japan is not high rocketing, it's almost zero. And the inflation is very minimal.
Okay, so give me that point on how the central bank can do it and still keep a check on inflation, because it's a worry for a lot of people who are trying to follow the argument you're putting across.
Good. So the issue now is, I want you to know in economics, printing money does not cause inflation. Just like if the IMF comes and gives us 10 billion US dollars, it will not cause inflation. If the World Bank gives us free money, or when we had a HEPIC and they gave us money, it doesn't cause inflation. What causes inflation is spending, government spending. When there's velocity of money or the money stock is going too fast as regards the level of development and the level of goods and services that are in the economy. So basically, therefore, if the central bank gave the Bank of Ghana, say, an additional 1 trillion Ghana cedi, it will not cause inflation. What will not cause inflation is what would the government use it to do? If government use that on frivolous expenditure, they give it to put money in people's pocket, or politicians just share that money, and there are not enough goods, enough cars, enough iPhones, enough goods, then it's a demand. Aggregate demand will outstrip aggregate supply. That's only when inflation comes. If that money is spent judiciously and is spent on capital expenditure, infrastructure, to build hospitals, to put railways from Takoradi to Elibu to Temele to Navrungu, and to create employment for the youth that are about almost 5 million youth, almost 30% of our youth are unemployed. That should not cause inflation. Every country did it. Just like
Prof,
in other countries where they did it.
This should be easy. Why do you think the central bank is not doing it? Can you understand why?
Because again, it's textbook economic theory. We all learned economics. The time has come for us to, I think, have a new conversation. Why is Africa so poor? Why are some of the things that the theories are asking us to do, they don't do it in other countries? Why are the central banks in Canada, in Japan, in Germany, in US, as I'm talking now, US, they printed about 3 trillion during the COVID. Why do they do things that they ask us that we cannot do? And how long do you think that Africa will develop, or Ghana will develop, if it's IMF that's going to give us $900 million? If we are going to always go into the international capital market to borrow, what will be the role of the fiscal policy or the central bank? It's because we have believed that it is wrong, it's a crime for you to do deficit financing. Deficit financing is not wrong. Deficit financing is actually what's supposed to happen, but it has to be sensible. So I'm not advocating for a willy-nilly, carte blanche, kind of senseless printing of money for government to spend. No, I am saying that both the NDC and NPP needs to begin to sit down to agree that our development challenge is massive and it cannot be done by outsiders. It has to be homegrown. It has to be self-reliant. And the central bank has a critical role to play. But of course, the government must be judicious and must spend that money wisely. And if it's about capital expenditure and infrastructure, it shouldn't necessarily cause inflation.
Okay, all right. But one thing going to the IMF also does, according to experts, is that it also gets you credibility from people who would want to invest in your economy. How does your proposition build confidence in the people who would want to put money into our economy in terms of investing?
Yeah, it's true. One of the good things the IMF brings is that it brings confidence. What is the confidence? The confidence only arises when we have accepted that we are so indisciplined and we are so unable to manage our resources unless we need an IMF as a referee to check us before we can be disciplined. Of course, if we tell the world that if the IMF does not come, we as Ghanaians, we are so stupid, we are so unintelligent, and we are so indisciplined that we will be involved in corruption and mismanagement of our economy unless some people fly from Washington to come and sit here, then of course we need to go to IMF. But if both the NDC and the NPP, intelligent people that they have in the government, many economists, and the academia, we sit down and say, look, we can manage our own affairs. Kwame Nkrumah did it. Many governments did it. They've done it in Singapore. They've done it in Malaysia. We started our development with Malaysia in the 60s. Korea, why have they gone ahead of us? Why is Korea's GDP per capita now almost about $30,000, and we are still around $2,000? What did they do differently? How did China become a world-class institution? And it was not the IMF that helped China. What I'm saying is that if we are going to do the right things and we are going to be disciplined, the rest of the world, they will know that these are disciplined people. Okay. And I think, Rwanda is showing the way. It's a disciplined country. So there's confidence for people to invest in Rwanda. And it's not the IMF that is making Rwanda to be disciplined or for investors to have confidence in Rwanda. So I think that we can show ourselves that we can manage our affairs and we can be disciplined. If we tell the world that we cannot be disciplined, then I think we have no option than to go to the IMF. But actually, the IMF is very good in insisting that you do the right thing. The unfortunate thing is that the effect of the IMF's policies are usually hurting the poor. Okay. They will still sit down and they will check the bourgeoisie. They will still sit down and check the politicians to recklessly spend. They can still collect their ex-gratia. They can still write on all the V8, and IMF will not say anything. But they will tell you, don't hire doctors, don't hire nurses, don't hire teachers. So who actually normally suffers from IMF program?
Thank you, Prof. I'm grateful that you found time to join us. Professor Charles Godfred Aka is an economist. Now, let's listen to former Finance Minister Seth Terkper on what our chances are and whether or not running to the IMF will worsen our current condition. He spoke on the AM show earlier.
Well, the government is supposed to, when they arrive, that's the staff coming, supposed to give a position, because we invited them, as I said, like the homegrown, and say this is, what we want to do. In the absence of that, since these were agreed, then this is going to be the basis for the discussion.
Okay.
These were agreed with government. There was a staff visit in April.
Yes.
So if the government is not prepared and they haven't told us what they are, I went to Parliament to tell Ghanaians what we're going to put before the IMF. So this, what I am reading now, and I urge Ghanaians to read for themselves. It's now on the website, Article 4, 2021. Let your producers and then we can have a conversation and you see the revelations. So in the absence of our own program, these are going to be the basis. Are you going to put, in fact, they spoke about Bank of Ghana and expect that Bank of Ghana will go back to zero financing. Are we capable? We went to zero financing. Bank of Ghana financed half of the deficit in 2020. They never gave COVID as a reason. They said if they were, it's in the MPC report, again you can download it, that if they were not to give government support, government would have difficulty borrowing and interest rates will go up. The very thing that is happening now. That was the reason.
And so usually when the staff of the IMF arrive and their deliberations and engagements, are there changes made to the policy document?
Well, eventually, so after the engagement, it will take line by line. It will take what they are saying on revenue, what is the expenditure position, because that is what is leading to the deficit on the fiscal side. So what measures do you have over the 3 years or so of the program, to bring it to manageable proportions so that it stops increasing, the the debt, which is a major concern. Then they go to the sector, energy sector. In fact, they spoke about energy sector. This document is very important. I urge Ghanaians to look at it. They'll talk about energy sector because the sectors, particularly the World Bank staff that are likely to come, they are interested in the sectors because they give budgets of support to all these sectors. And then they go to the monetary, led by the governor. And they will tell them all the things that they want to do, interest rate policy and all that, all those rates. And they have consultations with labor and other chamber of commerce and all those. So it's a very broad base, Then they put all this together, and then so they'll then come with what they think needs to be done against the government position, right? And then you come to some form of compromise, and that is what goes into the memorandum of economic policy and economic and financial policy, and the letter of intent which the minister and the governor, signs. Yes. So, and it's only then that you would have concluded. So this negotiation, if we have a position on all of this, can be fast. Otherwise, it takes a while, 6 to 9 months.
Back to my earlier question, based on this document that you've seen and all the issues you've raised in that document.
It's an official document.
Yes, I know. Yes. So should we expect, back to my question, should we expect tougher conditions? Because a lot of people appear to be very concerned about that. We are in difficult times. The cost of living keeps rising. Should we expect, like in your case, a freeze on salaries, a freeze on employment? I mean, per your experience, expertise, and what you've seen in this document.
Well, the government has to justify. The government, look, the point is it in our interest to reduce the deficit? I think we must ask ourselves as Ghanaians, is it in our interest to reduce the deficit? So that we can have debt that is manageable? Is it in our interest to stop putting energy sector costs as amortization only when it is paid? Is it in our interest not to reflect SDR, which we received? We didn't show it as revenue. Then we showed it straight. Why? Because if you showed it as revenue, one of the reasons is that then it means that the deficit will narrow. And you wouldn't have to take money from the stabilization fund. So those are questions we have to ask ourselves first. And this, for us, were the things that prompted us to do Senchi consultation. Because you are asking questions now. Labor, everybody will be there. Because you are going into a program that will affect all of them. Right? And remember, we wanted to do a homegrown policy. In fact, there's a feeling that we said we didn't want to go to IMF. No, we were negotiating intermediate programs. They have some programs, like the policy support instrument, PSI, where you say, this is my policies, we agree with you, but we are not taking your money, which we believe, with the buffers that we left. Or you can also do it, and that comes with a standby agreement, which means that in a period like COVID, that's when you go.
Now, on this matter, on social media, and precisely on the IMF's Facebook page, a good number of Ghanaians have been sharing various interesting comments at the back of government's decision to ask for a bailout. Let's share with you some of these reactions. Now, Al-Hajj Bob Kumbungo says, IMF, please, we are coming on, but please don't ask questions about how much we are spending on the president's travels. It's a national security matter. Thank you. Agnes Bonsu says, IMF, we need receipts for their corruption. We need to see what they are doing with our money. Joel Salifu says, don't give Ghana loan, please. Anil Kumara says, IMF management, all asset of Rajapaksa in Sri Lanka and abroad should be audited. This is the request of the citizens. Abu Kasim says, Ghana is coming for a bailout. Let's check. Joycelyn Akofa says, Ghanaians are begging you in whatever you believe in. Don't give any fund to the government. We can't even afford 3 square meal a day. Our eating patterns are 0-1-0, which means we eat once a day because of poverty. Over thousands of graduates are unemployed. All these because of the greediness of our leaders. If you give them, the money will be shared before reaching the shores of Ghana. Eugene Yendu says, please, is it true that you are being flooded by messages from Ghanaians? Okay. Peace Afi Dogbache says, International Monetary Fund, I'm sure your people assess what a country does with the loan it took before granting us another one. Please do not engage our president and his people in another money lending. They are scammers. They will only amass wealth for themselves and share the money amongst themselves. They will not use this money properly in any way. They imposed on us an illegal tax which brings in so much money at the end of every month, but still want to go for a bailout. They have over $400 million they want to use to build a national church. We have absolutely no need for. Please do not grant them any loan. They have houses stacked with money in this country. Tell them to go and use those monies they stole from the people. Thank you. That's Peace Afi Dogbache there. So these are comments from some Ghanaians on the IMF Facebook page. But the government spokesperson has been speaking on this particular matter. He's been reacting on it on the Pulse on JoyNews. He's been speaking to MFR Power. He says the justifications so far for Kenneth Arata to step down are neither here or there, nor there. Many critics, including former President John Mahama, have called for him to be sacked after running the fiscal space into a crisis. But he says he disagrees. He spoke on the probe with MFR Apau.
I handle policy for the information sector. If I say categorically, for example, that in the new broadcasting bill that we are working on, there will not be X or there will not be Y, and I finish, in the structures of government, I will go to cabinet and it will be put before the entire cabinet, which is an advisory body to the president. And the president and cabinet and the president and his other advisors will look at all that I'm saying, and he has every right, every power, because he's the one we voted for, to say, I hear you, but I disagree with this position, minister. This is the decision that we're going to go by. And we line up and we execute that decision. And I don't think there's any harm in that scenario. I think this is the appropriate time that you will take a decision like this. Let's go back. 2017, 2018, 2019, there was no basis to take a decision to go to the fund for a balance of payment supported program.
But the same COVID you're raising, it came up in 2020.
I'm coming. I'm saying 2017, 2018, 2019, there was no such need. 2020, as I've explained, our economy was badly hit. 2021, we actually took money from the fund. I hope people have not forgotten. We actually took about $1 billion from the fund to support our COVID response program. But that was not a balance of payment program. Now, as we're entering 2022, in November 2021, we put an economic program before the Republic, went to Parliament and sought to get that program approved, and then upon its approval, implemented. Take some of our revenue measures. Where ordinarily you would expect revenue measures to pass, let's say in November, December, so that by the 1st of January, implementation starts, and then you can build the revenues and the buffers that you are looking to deal with, for example, my brother's national service allowance, or the cost of living allowance, as my colleagues are asking for. It has taken about 4 months before you get one revenue measure pushed through. 137, 137, yes, we understand, but there are things that sometimes we do, and sometimes we are of the view that it is politics, but they have implications. It's taken 4 months to get that revenue measure pushed through. Take, for example, apart from that revenue measure, the need to ensure that we have a window to be able to attract international reserves from the international capital markets. We end up doing some things that lead to a downgrade. If you read the downgrade of the Ghanaian economy by the international ratings agencies, it is there. One of the reasons includes how we have handled ourselves in Parliament. So now we are downgraded. You are downgraded, you can't access the international capital markets. So that even if your internal revenue measures were delaying, you could access some money from the international capital markets without going to the fund.
So away from the IMF, let's do some politics now. General Secretary of the National Democratic Congress, Johnson Asiedu Nketia, has called on all social democratic parties in the country to see themselves as one and come together to rescue the country from the governing New Patriotic Party. He urged them to put the petty squabbles over slogans, names and personalities at the back burner and rather go for principles and policies which are more sustainable. Asiedu Nketia made the call at the swearing-in of 1,000 defectors from the Progressive People's Party to the National Democratic Congress in Wa. JoyNews' Upper West Regional Correspondent Rafik Salam report from Wa.
The IMF
addressing
Ghana
1,000 supporters of the Progressive People's Party (PPP) in the Upper West region who are defected to the National Democratic Congress (NDC). General Secretary of the Progressive People's Party (PPP) in the Upper West region who have defected to the National Democratic Congress (NDC). General Secretary of the NDC, Asedu Nketie, called on all social democratic parties in the country to see themselves as one and come together to annex power from the MPP in 2024.
If we are bent on focusing on the interests of Ghana, we should be prepared to forget about names and slogans and personalities who perform one operation or the other, because individuals and personalities may fade away, but principles and policies will stay if we all believe in the principles of unity and national development and equal opportunities for all. Then our home should be one political party, that is the National Democratic Congress.
The NDC's General Secretary, better known as General Mosquito in the political space, disclosed that the founder of the PPP, Dr. Pakwesi Indum, started his political career flirting with the NDC before he joined the new Patriotic Party (NPP) and later was made a minister in the Kufuor administration. The NPP, however, saw him too powerful and decided to cripple his wings, not only through his politics, but his business as well.
After they have finished using Dr. Pakwesi Indum, they realized that he was becoming too strong a political force. So they have to cripple him, not only through crippling of his political party, but crippling of his business, so that he cannot find the financial muscle to run his political party.
Dr. Pakwesi Indum to join the Upper West Region's PPP's example and call on other regions to defect to the NDC.
I would like to send a message through this forum that I wish that Dr. Indum would declare, as you have done today, that members of the PPP believe in social democracy, and for which reason they must all follow the example of the Upper West PPP, so we can build a formidable force to be able to defeat MPP and to rescue this country.
Spokesperson of the defectors, Adam Zaga, stated that they have defected to the NDC because of the numerous projects that the NDC has bequeathed to Ghanaians and the hardship that the MPP is inflicting on Ghanaians.
The settlement of developmental projects, such as now the new regional hospital, UDS, now known as UBs, all of them, they have developed it in here. We can all see it. And what they have done in Accra too. Construction of the new regional library. And then construction of E-blocks. They have done a lot.
Reporting for JoyNews, Rafik Salam. Wow.
Now, some Muslim pilgrims expected to travel to Mecca have been left stranded and disappointed. According to some of them, all their passports have been withheld by the Hajj board, while some alleged their names have been intentionally removed from the final list of travelers. Here's a story of some of these disgruntled pilgrims.
Barakat Abdul Rahman is a mother of one. She is at the Hajj village in Accra with her husband and extended family. She is one of many hoping to make the journey to Mecca. This would have been her first time.
So one day I was there and he asked me whether I have yellow fever injection. I have COVID injection. I said yes. He said I should bring it to him. I said why? He said you just bring it because I'm taking it to Hajj. I was in my shop, so I just shouted Allahu Akbar. I was happy and I went to his place and gave him the COVID test. They gave us the yellow fever people. I gave it to him.
Her hopes have been dashed.
They said they cannot find my passport. But I should wait, so I'm still waiting. If I want to go, if only there's a visa, I wanted to go. Nobody, hey, even if you are a cripple and they ask you to go to Hajj, you run and go. It's a holy land. Don't you want to go to Holy Land? I'm broken inside. I don't want to cry, but it's not easy. Telling all the neighbors you are traveling, see you coming back home with your bag. It's something, but alhamdulillah.
Her journey started as far back as 2019. Her family planned her trip to the holy city of Mecca as a surprise. Her brother, Ahmed Tijani Abdul Rahman Muhammad, was the mastermind.
So myself with the husband, in 2019, planned to give her a surprise. So by God's grace, we were able to raise the cedi's equivalent of 3,750 USD. That's in 2019. But due to the coronavirus, Hajj was cancelled worldwide.
According to him, the Hajj board promised to prioritize the 2019 batch.
And we were told those who paid in 2019 are going to be among the first passengers who are going to leave to to Saudi Arabia. The holiness of the whole issue, probably the process is not as holy as the activity itself, because if you look at the promise that they made in 2019, they break the promise by saying they should add 7,000 Ghana cedis. That alone made the process unholy.
With diminished hope, he promises to take back his money.
You are in some kind of pain and they're still giving you hope. I'm seeing the hope to be a false hope. This time we're not going to leave the money with them. That's the first thing. And I told him when he's going to bargain to take our money from them, it should be cedi's equivalent of 3,750 USD plus the 7,200 that we gave him. So that's what we're going to take.
They are not alone. Abdul Razak Salifu paid to visit Mecca in 2020. Although with all the documentation intact, his name is not on the list of travelers.
Our agent go inside, come back, go inside, come back. At all last, he tell us it's not sure that the trips our journey will do. So we don't have hope. Now I'm sitting like this, I don't have any hope that I'll go back. I'll go to back. I'm feeling fine, I'm feeling happy, I'm not feeling happy.
Alima Kasimo is another disappointed traveler. In her case, she was told there was no flight.
My baby, I feel me bedi tag. Na ya share me bag in so. Almost see flat na yema. Enti almost the passport. Almost snapping. Almost almost ko hwe na mo benya Egypt and Dubai. No mo dia ko enti entwe. Almost me catch almost say. So yenti me an ko mo catch re fijana pa na eba. Man didi enye force. Year 2020.
Earlier, news of the omission of names and missing passports shocked many. While many may not be able to make the journey, but some got lucky. Like Alhaji Tamimu Gadu and his wife, this is their third time visiting the holy city.
So if you are able to get chance and go and then worship your God, your creator, someone who created you, who made you to breathe in air free of charge and breathe out free of charge. Open your mouth, eat free of charge. The eyes you can see free of charge. You have to thank him.
Alhaji Gadu wants the quota for Ghana to be reviewed and if possible increased next year.
The quota that was given to Ghana, imagine every year 6,700. Do you get me? And this And it came to a time, for about 2 years now, we have not gone to Hajj. And when we are given the chance to go to Hajj now, the quota was cut, slashed down to 3,069. Could you imagine?
For those with the opportunity to ride in the bus to the airport, who will be making their journey to Mecca, probably the closest they will ever be to their God. Not all of them. For some people at the Hajj village, this process has been chaotic, largely also denied the opportunity to make the same journey. They are broken-hearted and wish that something is done about it. For Joy News, Michael Ashale.
So the Hajj board have said that what is happening is as a result of oversubscription. We're trying to lay hold of them so we can have a chat on that. If we do, we'll let you have that. If not on this bulletin, on our subsequent bulletins. But in the meantime, encroachers are taking over the green belt, protecting the Wager Lake and the Wager Water Treatment Plant. The Ghana Water Company Limited had earlier said the increase in human activities in the buffer zone of the lake, including the illegal sand mining and development of estates, were threatening its ability to treat the water. It took a visit by the Sanitation and Water Resources Minister, Cecilia Abinadapa, to stop the illegal sand mining activities, but the encroachment persists, and the water sources for millions of people is at stake. Manuel Kuranting visited the area for this week's edition of Joy in My Community. Here's his report.
So the Minister for Sanitation and Water Resources, the Honorable Cecilia Abinadapa, led a task force right around here to stop what turned out to be illegal sand winning just along the buffer zone of the Wager Water Treatment Plant. Well, just months on, the destruction that had been caused by these illegal miners is still reeling and impacting the environment. What's more, encroachment on the buffer just along the Wager River also continues in earnest. Mr. Moses, Moses is one of the residents just around here going to talk to us about the situation.
Like 10 years.
10 years. In beside Oyo. Main town. Down.
Down.
Okay. Okay. So when I knew about Naboya, I mean, fear be I'm not called Chote.
I mean Chote.
Say no to me cafe. Akebachuni. Men uju manaka.
Akwa flow.
Flow
concrete.
Okay. Wenchu.
Wenchu.
About flow wenchu. Okay. Okay. Ni teneng bene nai.
Oh la. Na chagavo.
Okay.
Tabwa
na acha gawle ni yo biene. Okay.
Ni yo me ni nai ni jura me.
Okay. E wo ni acha back na acha ke fe ke ya. Te afi den bo wa na bi.
Oh akete ya ameji hotel.
Oh down ni yo jeme fe, chujien ni yo jeme fe ke fe ame te jien bi te na ke fe o.
Awo da bi.
Ekumemu.
Ama heo e. To BP ama heo mena granite.
Okay.
BP ama heo mena am blocking.
Okay.
Yeah, ina chuo yeah.
Okay.
Chije bienele. Akoni nimba chuni okwa chuni ya biene.
So he tells me these rocks are sourced from parts of the cliff which were being blasted and carted away by illegal sand miners. It had to take a visit by the Sanitation and Water Resources Minister to stop them, but they left behind these huge rocks which he's breaking. What he's working on now will be used to cast concrete down the cliff where the buildings are fast springing up. He also admits that even though there's a greenbelt demarcation, some of these new developers are encroaching the buffer and eating deep into the greenbelt.
How is that? I feel encroaching. Hello. Okay. So now we're attempting to descend this particular cliff, which leads us deep into the green belt, or if you like, the buffer zone of the Wager Lake. and it's quite a steep slope. And this is not something that we actually do every day, but fortunately we have been able to come down. And as I was explaining, this is a very, very steep slope, which requires a lot of tact to be able to descend. Fortunately, we've got that tact and we are down here.
So that was Manuel's report from Wager. We'll take a quick break here. When we return, we'll bring you the latest from the world of business. Stay with us.
Hello and welcome. It's now time to do business with me, Beverly Broom. Fruit juice manufacturing company Ekunfi Fruits and Juice Factory says it will in a few months begin exporting its products Eku Juice to the United States and the United Kingdom markets. The company also says there are competing demands globally for the juice. The operations manager of the company, Frederick Kobina Aqua, spoke to JoyNews after a tour by the Member of Parliament for Ekunfi, Abeku Quenso. Here's more in the following report.
The Ekunfi Fruit and Juices Factory, a factory under government's One District, One Factory initiative, is currently targeting cultivating 12 acres of pineapple to enable them expand their markets. The operations manager of the company, Frederick Kobina, at a visit of the MP for Ekunfi, stated that the company was working very hard to satisfy the Ghanaian market and to also meet the expectations of the global market. He revealed some tests are being done. In a couple of months, the product will find its way into the global market space because of the interest that has been shown in the product.
What we do here is just squeezing our juice from pineapple, squeezing some from orange, squeezing our syrups from the ginger, and these are the products they produce themselves. And then we just squeeze and box it as you've seen here. There was a pallet I was showing the Honorable MP is leaving for the United States tonight, but not just the pallet. It is going for a certain test because Ekunfi Fruits and Juices Limited in the next few months will be exporting to the United States of America market. There are other interests from the European market and then the UK as well. There are some in China that we are working at, but we haven't finalized on that. But the earlier ones that I mentioned are on course.
Frederick Kobina indicated that they were excited about the current operational picture of the company. He further explained why the product may not be seen in most of the market areas in the country.
We produce every day, we sell every day. A classmate of mine, when she heard that I was involved with Ekunfi, said, oh, okay, we buy it every day. And then just at that point, another classmate said, matipat mi huye, or something. Then she said, whenever he gets to the shop owner calls her husband, and then she comes to pick 5, 6. Then I say, you are the cause. So now that's what's happening in the market. Because of the quality, people go to leave money with the distributors and with the bigger shops. And once the juice arrives, they are called to come and pick. So we will take a truckload of juices to a shop. The next day you go and it is not there. It's been taken by the patrons. We are working at that anyway.
Some 400 junior high school teachers in the Obuasi enclave have received specialized training meant to equip them employ modern ways to effectively execute the new curriculum of the Ghana Education Service. The initiative by the mining giant Anglo Gold Ashanti Ghana Obuasi Mine forms part of the mine's socio-economic management plan that holds education as an economic empowerment tool. Here's a report.
The current pass rate of basic education certificate examination in the Obuasi enclave is 90%. Anglo Gold Ashanti, in its quest to improve the pass rate, has trained 400 teachers in Obuasi. The training program was designed to equip teachers with the differentiated learning approaches that would help them deliver on the new curriculum. Mavis Nanayache, a social development and gender superintendent, Anglo Gold Ashanti.
Are doing this to also improve the pass rate of BEC, because once the teachers are able to adapt new skills in teaching for the people to understand and also embrace the new curriculum content, then they'll be able to pass their exams. So basically, it's because we want to have a good pass rate. Currently, it sits at 90 in Obuasi. We want to take it to 96. So that is how come we are engaging and intervening with a lot of initiatives in education to improve the pass rate of BEC in Obuasi.
That's all for business now. We have more business news in our subsequent bulletins. Up next is sports.
Well, time for sports, and Lawrence is already in the house. Lawrence, what's up today?
Well, over the weekend, Alexander Juku was crowned the Player of the Year at the Ghana Football Awards 2022 edition. He succeeds Andre Ayew, who won it last year. So the award looked more like a Kotoko dominating award because they came out with 5 awards at the end of the day. They were nominated for 7. They had nominations in 7 of those awards, but then they ended up winning 5. The most
deservedly so.
Of course, for whatever good season they had, they just ended one. It was right that they scooped all awards. I think Yao Ano also deserved his Kotoko manager or Kotoko head coach.
Dr. Prosper
Good.
Ogun.
The doctor is very necessary.
Yeah.
He ended up
his PhD.
Exactly. He ended up with the Coach of the Year award. So I think Ampim Dakwa also came into the picture for the training has Azakes ladies for what they did last year. They also came into the picture, won the female team of the year, and then their coach was winning the female coach of the year.
We have to also acknowledge Nana Mponsa for the CEO of the year.
I think in the last 2 years, no one comes close to what he's doing at Kotoko.
Yeah.
He won it last year, and then he's won it this year again. It's only right that he will get to the nomination next year too, because he's full of ideas. And Brace, just before we go, there's news coming in that the Black Maidens of Ghana have been banned for the next 2 editions of the Africa qualifiers because they were
2 of our ladies.
Yes, Nancy Amwen and Rashida. Yeah, they were caught. They were allegedly caught with 8 cheating. So that's a bit of unfortunate news coming in there for Ghana.
All right. So that's how we wrap up today's edition of the News Desk. There's more on my joyonline.com. My name is Samuel Kojo. Brace to enjoy the rest of your morning.